Hi guys, this is Alan from Endure. As you can see, I'm sitting here with lovely Linda Farrington. Feeling blessed today that she's taken her time out to just have a bit of a chat and just share some of her wisdom. Linda, can you tell us who are the traditional landowners here?
The Yidinji tribe,
The
I
Yidinji
believe there must have been about 4
Yes.
different clans.
Okay.
But that's way before I was even born, for that matter.
Yes.
But I've always known myself
Yes.
to be of the Mullenborough
Yes.
Yidinji tribe.
Mullenborough Yidinji tribe. Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay, so what I want to do is start. I think that's a good place to start. You said that you obviously weren't here in those times, but can you take us on a little bit of a journey through your early years of life?
I believe I grew up and I was born in 1940 and nothing came to fruition in my remembrance
Yes.
until I was about 4 years old.
Okay.
And at that time, my dad was a Christian man.
Yes.
He married my mum,
Yep.
well, way before any of us were born.
Yep.
And he married my mother, Alice.
Yes.
They worked on a farm, and on that farm was a married couple. I believe their background was German. And back in those days, you had to be responsible for any dark people that were on the property or living around.
Okay.
And they picked my dad,
Yes.
Mick.
Yes.
And my dad worked for them for about 14 years.
Wow.
But the boss of that place took charge of my dad,
Okay.
meaning as a protector
Yes.
on their farm.
Oh. Okay.
And my granddad lived a kilometre away,
Yes.
but we were all close in proximity,
Yep.
relatives and all.
Yes.
But at that time also we had the American Yanks that were up, and I could remember that at the age of 4.
So what were they doing?
This is, I don't know, they usually come every year or every 2 years to celebrate the Coral Sea Week.
Okay.
But they were on land and they built their humpy or their hub, as you'd like to call it.
Yes.
And just stayed. That was their station. If the plane came by and dropped them by parachute,
Yes.
that's right near their doorstep.
Yes.
But it was on where we lived,
Yes.
and that was another property across the road.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was. They were a well-to-do couple. Those
Yes.
people that took Dad on
Yes.
as their protector.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, lovely.
But to go from there, things used to happen. Like people, there were other dark families around,
Mm-hmm.
and they used to come at night time or daytime. Mainly at night, they would say to Dad, "Hey Mick, what about a cottage meeting tonight?" And that's what used to happen. And that's how I was brought up. Not just at 4 years old. This went from 4, 5.
So what was a cottage meeting? Explain.
Cottage meeting
Mm.
was a little house meeting,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Then it became a tarry meeting, meaning prayer meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And it was just awesome.
Wow.
When I say awesome,
So the people on the property were Christians.
no, they weren't.
Oh, they
but
weren't?
They used to. Their children used to come on over
Okay.
and see what was cooking. But
Yep.
being white, they didn't know, but they understood prayer, like Our Father who art in
Yes,
heaven,
yes.
hallowed be thy name, because we're all brought up with that prayer in
Yes.
school,
Yes.
black and white.
Yes.
So what happened here was ministers used to come in, Haverhill someone, I can't remember their names, Matt knows them, but they knew us too. And we're known as the Ambrams, but they spotted up any time they did when they were ministering in the area
Okay.
of Gordondale,
Yes.
right? And from then on it was just church, but we had planes flying over our house.
So
And
was
it
that the Americans that were?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
You know, dropping
Yes.
uh, dropping parachutes
Yes.
down with the guys on it, if not as food
Yes.
for the parachuters.
Yes.
You know, and they'd go off to
So
their.
did they interact with you guys?
They did.
They did.
Very much so.
Were they pleasant to?
Very,
to-
very well pleasant.
Yeah, lovely.
They really were. They used to come on over to my mum and dad. Hey Mick, hey Alice, would you be able to give us something out of your coupon? Coupon is just like a checkbook,
Okay. Yep.
and that was like, it's a coupon.
Yep.
People will know what I'm saying.
Yeah, for
you
sure,
know,
for sure.
If they see this.
Yes.
And that coupon was B for bread,
Yep.
T for tea,
Yes.
S for sugar,
Yes.
C for coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. So they take out coffee,
Yep.
because Americans are into coffee,
Yes. Yes.
and that was that, and it was liquid in those days.
Oh wow, like
Yep.
a syrupy sort of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
And they're into that the whole time.
Yep.
But they would swap with us
Okay.
as to what they, mum
So
and
there was
dad
a bit of
would
a
like.
barter system
That is
going
right.
on.
It was a
Yes.
barter system.
Okay.
But we became good mates.
Yeah. So what kind of things were the Americans sort of willing to trade in that space?
There was candy for the kids. There was candy for the kids, and I can't remember much of what they did swap, because our dad was a very strict father. We were not allowed anywhere near adults.
Yes.
He was very strict in
Yes.
that way.
Yes.
We had to get and play,
Yep.
and if those guys came over, or
Yes.
those Yanks came on over,
Yep.
we had to get about our own play business.
Yep. Yep.
And that was it. So I never knew what they
Yeah. Okay.
would
But
spot.
you knew a bit of candy turned up every now and
And a
again.
bit of candy. We'd be glad to see
Yeah.
them coming.
Yes,
And I
yes.
thought, oh, here comes candy.
Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Like
That's
that,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
I
So-
had an
yeah.
older brother, and he used to go down there to visit, but bring home candy at the same time.
Yes. Okay. Because he
That's
was
just
older,
it.
he was allowed to.
He was allowed
He
to.
was allowed to go down and sort of.
We were not allowed
yeah,
to go anywhere.
Yeah. And you gotta love those the heart of the father who just wants to shepherd his kids and look
Yes.
after his
Well,
kids.
that is
so
true, and he's
that's
very, very, very protective
Yes.
of us.
Yes. Beautiful.
You know,
Beautiful. beautiful.
and even when men came,
Yes.
other than outside of little church
Yes.
prayer meeting or whatever,
Yes.
they'd come and sit and talk,
Yes.
and they would talk language to my mum and everything. We were not allowed anywhere near
Okay. Yes.
near
yes.
them.
Yes. So good. So good.
Yes. And
In your culture, did you have your own tongue, so to speak? Was there an actual dialect or a language that you spoke that wasn't English, basically?
that was Yidinji language.
Yurinji.
Yidinji?
Litin.
Yidinji?
Yurinji.
Yeah, say Yid,
Yid.
Inji.
Inji.
Yidinji.
Yidinji.
Or if not, silent Y and put an I.
Yep.
Idinji.
Okay.
Right?
So do you still recall any of that?
That's Idinji
Yidinji,
language,
okay,
right?
yes.
And I cannot talk it
Yes.
because our dad would not allow us
Okay.
to talk our Idinji language.
All right. Did you understand it?
No.
No.
Yeah.
And how could you have if you couldn't
Well, that
immerse
is true,
yourself into
yeah.
that and talk it? Yes.
My
yes.
mum could speak it,
Yes.
but with an adult women's in conversation.
I've got to say, I actually think that was such an amazing thing in a way that your dad done, because it actually transitioned you into that English speaking. I went to a school where there was a lot of ethnic kids, and they would come over to our country, and then they would, whatever country they were from,
Yeah.
and they had grown up in this language, and then they'd come to this country, but they couldn't speak English, and it was such a struggle for them. They might have been Lebanese or Italian or whatever to try and then fit in and speak. And I suppose in a sense, you obviously were already here, but the conversation as the country was getting colonised was going into a different way. But then your dad almost saw that, and then
Yes.
sheltered you in a sense by bringing that into your vocab, which I actually think is incredible. So to move forward a little bit in the timeline, say by the time, what was your life looking like, early, so later in your childhood to your early teenage years?
From 4
Yes.
to 5, I'm still with our family because there's about 11,
Yes.
was 12.
Yes.
There was there's 11, 7 brothers
Yes.
and 4 sisters.
Okay, yes.
And we moved on, but as it was during the war years, now come on, we were going 40, 41, 42.
Yes,
Remember?
yes, yes.
That was during the war years.
Yes.
And
That's why the
where-
Americans were here.
That is right.
Yes.
Yes, and they were there and around us.
So this was all happening during your
Yes.
upbringing. Okay, yes.
And bombs were falling, that's the enemy.
Yep.
Yeah, they were falling, but none on our house. Around our house,
Wow.
which was an old iron home with dirt floor,
Yes.
but we were happy in it.
I was going to ask that. So what was?
We were so
That's
happy in it,
amazing.
and everywhere else the bomb fell, it never blew up.
Wow.
That's what I know about it, because we used to play with live bombs, and it never went off. God protected us.
Oh, definitely.
He kept us.
Definitely. He definitely
He
did.
kept us,
He definitely did.
and he did.
He
Did
did.
it, and at night we, even with the protector that looked after Dad, Mum
Yes.
and Dad, their sons and nephews would come on over to play with us,
Wow.
and they'd see the bombs over there.
Yes.
See, we were all safe. We were,
Yes.
we were all protected, and this is coming up now at 5 and
Yes.
6. We found bombs that did not go off,
That's
and
amazing.
because we'd be running
Wow.
for safety. Or
So
there's
that,
a
how
big-
close would those? Like, what was the close vicinity of a bomb landing near your house to your recollect?
Okay, this is that home,
Yes.
right? Okay, over there was all the guava bushes,
Okay.
right? When I say guava bushes, that's how far.
So about
And we could go
10 metres away?
yes,
5 metres
and we
away?
could go in there,
Yes.
but with the guava bushes, you can see through.
Yes.
You see, yeah, you can see through, and we'd run on over and play Tarzan or whoever, and just go in there and play.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yes.
So good.
And just go swinging off trees and everything, and we'd find bombs. But there you go. You see, it never touched us.
Yes.
Never went off when we played with the bombs.
Mm.
And this is coming on from 4, 5 to 6. We're in the one place. And when I turned 6 or 5 or 6, it was school to go to.
Mm.
Only my 2 older brothers, Tommy
Mm.
and Elwood,
Mm.
they could go to school.
Mm.
We couldn't because our dad said, well, at least these 2 know how and where to run. But with you kids, when you go to school, that'll be Darby, myself, and Ronnie. We couldn't because we may get lost somewhere along the way. And now this is coming from, this is about 15 kilometres
Wow, that's how long they.
to come down to
Yes.
the Gordonvale State School.
Wow. So how did they get to school?
By horse and buggy,
Yes.
or whoever can take us,
Yes.
or if not, walk.
Yes.
Hmm.
Wow. Incredible.
And
Incredible.
it was walk.
Yeah.
And we used to walk past,
Yeah.
not we, but they used to
They
walk
used to
past
walk
the
past, yes.
Yankees camp,
Yep.
all the way along Riverston Road.
Yes.
Hmm.
Wow. Incredible.
Yes, and there are days when we couldn't, didn't want to, our dad didn't want to send us
Yes.
because of the
What was going on?
dangers.
Yeah. Of course. Of course.
Yes.
There's so much just in that that's jumping out for me. One, you're living in the war zone.
Yep.
And you mentioned something that I think people in general have lost in their journey of life. You mentioned that you've lived in a tin hut with
Yep.
a dirt floor, but yet you were happy.
Very happy.
Because happy isn't based on a material possession. So can you explain, like, what's a happy memory for you growing up as a child?
My happy memory is knowing and loving my mother and father.
Wow.
And in my heart, whew, I've always made my dad the hero.
Yes.
He was the hero.
Mm.
He knew how to protect us.
Mm.
He knew when to crack the whip.
Mm. Mm.
Not on us,
Mm.
but as soon as we hear the whip cracking, we were in earshot.
Yep.
We just had to know
Yes.
why he cracked that whip.
Yep.
Yes, it's to get home. Even though the ground was sparse enough for us to play,
Yes.
but we were in other areas with white kids
Yes.
that grew up the same time as us.
Yep.
And he would say, "Come on, wash your hands, or it's time to go and have a bucket shower," you know,
Yes.
like that,
Yep.
so you can be clean.
Yes. So
You know?
what was the relationship like with the white children and you guys growing up?
It was just like brothers and
Yes.
sisters.
I love the fact that, well, one, God doesn't look at us as colour.
No,
He looks at us. He looks at the heart. He looks at us as people.
we were brothers and sisters.
And I love the way kids just love. You know what I mean? They just, like you say, the brothers and sisters. I think there's a real purity in that sort of heart of kids that just are loving, and
Yeah.
they're not caught up in a colour with you.
That is
You know,
right.
Indigenous or whether you're Asian or whatever. They're people, and we all are.
Well, these white sons and daughters of the various farmers
Yes.
that lived just around abouts
Mm.
out there, could be as far as, you know, over towards that way.
Yes.
And it's quite a distance to walk. And when I say distance, you can see the house you're going to.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And like I say, we grew up as sisters, and those white boys grew up as brothers.
Yeah. Praise the Lord. So
To
nice.
all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to rush the story because I'm sure there's
It's
so
okay.
much in it.
Mm.
But I am curious, sort of, you know, like a little bit later in life, even to the teenage. Or how long did the war go for? Would be a good question to ask. And then when that all came to a head, what was the shift like?
I believe they celebrated that about 45, 46.
Okay.
The
So
end of the war.
end of it. So you're looking at like 4 years.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow.
And that was the end of it. So, how old am I?
About
4,
8.
5, 6, 7. That time, and my dad started to move about.
Okay.
You know, if there was no, you know how you got seasonal work,
Yes.
and that season's over,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
My dad looked elsewhere
Yes.
to see where he could
You
get
could get some more work. Yes.
some more work.
Yes.
And that place would be down at Wrights Creek. This is since I was 4 years old, but it goes back further than that. It was just, we used to be on the tablelands, but we were tiny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
So
don't
Wrights
remember.
Creek, for those who don't know, how far a commute would that have been?
I'd say it's a 10-minute drive on the highway now
Yes,
to Maitland Road.
yes.
You see a road called Maitland
Yep,
Road?
yep, yep.
There.
Okay.
We drive down that road, no bitumen
Yes,
at all.
yes,
And just down over the other side was a river
yep,
and banks
Yes.
and a little mountainous
yep,
kind of mountain.
yep,
My dad just went and built some sort of a little place
yes.
for us to go and live because he found work.
Ah, so he wasn't he wasn't actually working away, you just went with him,
Yes.
and then he built at a place for you to stay in.
Yes.
And that's incredible. That's incredible. That is so
And it
amazing.
was, you know how you see in Vanuatu,
Yes.
just all grass.
Yes.
What's
Thatched
that?
roofs,
That's
yes.
how it was.
Wow.
My dad was a builder.
Yes.
Yeah, by trade.
Yes.
But that's what happened,
Yes.
and he built that in a made it comfortable for
Yes.
us. Yes.
Mhm.
Mm.
There's something that people might know that Linda is an incredible singer, and I had the honour and privilege of hearing her sing the other day. So I remember you shared a little story about, like, when did you get into singing?
I grew up in.
You grew, was that from your church meetings that you were just singing in that
Yes.
space?
Mm.
So I'm sort of just, this is almost a bit of a random question in some sense, but where has that singing journey taken you?
Well, really, as I was always singing in church.
Yes.
Right. I've always sung in church, and the voice. Someone would say to me that that's a voice of an angel. Well, I didn't know what that was all about. you
Yes,
see.
yes.
And I'm coming up 8,
Yes.
you know, and as we grew up to where we shifted down to a place called Wrights Creek,
Mm.
that's where I found my voice properly.
So
As a
what is
9-year-old child. you
as a
know.
9-year-old child, okay, so I
7
want
or
you to
8.
talk into that space. What did that look like when you say you found your voice? Like, what was the transition from before, when you were singing and people enjoyed it, to you saying you found your voice? What was...
Well, as I always sung,
Mm.
when we used to there was little blobs of, what do you call it? Fire, no. I'll think of it in a minute, yes. When you come to a place and you're on fire. What do you call that?
When you're on fire, as in Holy Spirit fire?
That's right, yes. And then we'd meet at different churches
Okay.
between Wrights Creek
Yes.
and Durrell,
Yes.
Labenda,
Yep.
these little spot fires.
Ah, yes.
Revival.
Yes, revival. Hallelujah.
Small revivals.
Yes.
Everywhere. Back in those days.
Yes.
And we used to go travel for miles.
Wow.
That's how we were. My uncle had a big truck.
Yep.
And all we had to do was just sit still in the back of this big truck. He had a open, what's his name? So
Cabin.
we all had to sit still. Our dad used to travel with us, our mum used to. You see, and we would sing as we're travelling.
Yes.
Hmm.
So how many people were in the back of this truck singing?
Just all my brothers,
Yes.
my sisters,
Yes.
and Uncle John's daughters.
Yeah. So when you, I'm still curious on that part, you said that's where I found my voice. Like,
Well, when we went to Durrell, and I was 8 or 9, one of the preachers said, now we have a little girl here, and we're going to ask her to sing. And if anything, would she sing her favourite song? I wasn't shy or anything. I got up and stood at the front, and for as loud as I could,
wow.
I sang, Jesus keeps me near the cross.
Wow.
Yes. And I sing that, and when I sung the chorus, in the cross, be my glory ever, till I reach that golden shore, just beyond the river. That's that song, and it's stuck in my heart.
Mm.
That's when I found my voice, when I lifted my voice
Mm.
for the King to hear me.
Hallelujah. Yeah.
Just for the King.
Yes, yeah,
to hear
the
me.
audience of one, and that's where there was no fear.
Yes.
Well, Timothy, because you knew the love of the Father for his daughter,
I knew
and you're singing to.
I was singing to him.
And that again is we could be here for the next 2 weeks. But in that, what was it like for you? When did you know that you had this other father? You had this earthly father who was obviously an incredible man and such a great protector in your family. But when did you, as a young lady, actually go, I've got this heavenly father who's the creator of the universe? When did that happen?
That didn't happen until in my mid-teens. Now we're going from 9,
Okay, yep.
10, because we're still in church,
Yep.
and we're still going around,
Yes.
travelling from one church to another.
Yes.
You know, from Wrights Creek to Cairns to Redlinge to.
So we use like virtually travelling evangelism.
That's right.
Yes.
Yes.
So you were like your day's version of what my wife and I do.
Exactly.
As you travel
That's
around.
why I hopped to it
Yes.
when you two were coming.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was then when where was I going with this conversation?
When you actually became a Christian, you travelled around from those years.
Yes, that is right. But I believe God had His hand on me,
Yes.
regardless of what may.
Yes.
We've had ups and downs.
Yes.
You know, as brothers and sisters, and we're starting to grow now and notice things.
Yes.
And as we noticed, they were the bright lights.
Yes.
But that's in the teens. But I used to go up to a little place called Pinnacle Pocket up on the Atherton Tablelands. And we used to go on up there because my dad that's where he was born, in Atherton.
Yes.
So, but we're still with, where I'm going to be baptized in the Holy Spirit. I knew nothing.
Yes.
And I was in the toilet. This was out in Machan's Beach. I was in the toilet. And as I was sitting there, bang, didn't it happen? I could see the Holy Spirit above me. I could see him. I could see him there. And it's just coming down like I was having a nice warm shower.
Hallelujah.
It was beautiful. And I could feel it and I could not move. And right now as I'm speaking, I could feel here now.
Yes.
The same thing that I experienced. And I would have been about 16, 17
Wow.
when I experienced that.
So before that, because I'm just, for people who maybe haven't been baptized in the Holy Spirit, I'm trying to sort of link in, like, obviously you knew God and you had this awareness of God and this heart to serve God because you were singing and you were travelling. So how did it change your awareness of God once you were baptized in the Holy Spirit? Like, did you notice this, like you've had this shower of His love poured upon you? How did that change your relationship with Him after that?
I was very much aware,
Yes.
right? Until we lost our dad.
Okay.
Then it was like the bottom fell out of everything.
Yes.
It was out of my world.
Yes.
And we had no dad.
Yes.
We had no strict supervision over us.
Yes.
Not that you could do as you please. We still had our mum.
So was that at the same age, was it? Were you 16?
No, it was a little younger than
A little
that.
younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yes.
Say 10 years that happened.
Yep.
I was 10-year-old.
Yes.
That happened
Yes.
when our dad died.
Okay. Yes.
Right. But he was always on my mind.
Yes. I get that.
Always.
Yes.
Until, but I was still going to church.
Yes.
It didn't stop me from going to
Of
church.
course.
But my dad has died,
Yes. Yes.
all of us, our
Yes.
brother, my older brothers and sisters. And of course, I was just going to church and some of them started to drift, the boys.
Yes.
And then I looked at that situation and I started to drift, but I never forgot to go back
Yes.
to church.
Yes.
It was like going out there or going up the street to see whatever activities.
Yes.
Going to the movies,
Mm.
and of course my mum used to have that strict hand over us. Me especially being the oldest
Yes.
and a young girl,
Yes.
and she had to keep her wits about her to correct me and check me at
Yes.
all times.
Yes.
And because even though my brothers used to go then to the movies,
Yes.
I'd follow
Yes.
but they were the brothers who were watching as well.
Yeah.
Mm. We were not allowed to sit on land. This is where I kind of found that it got a little interesting, you know, about the bright lights I'm talking about now.
Yeah, so as in the bright lights, explain what you mean by that. What does that mean?
And the bright lights, then my mum discovered a radio, transistor radio, and then we heard songs.
So would the bright lights be those things that could pull you in another
That is,
direction?
it was.
Yes.
But at the same time, we were listening to I met a man called Peter. Da, 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 da. If everyone knew Peter, what a great world this would be. For he can turn the tides and calm the angry sea. We used to hear that. I used
Yes.
to know. And it sort of stuck to me.
Yes.
And I could sing them songs.
Yeah, it's amazing when you said that word, bright lights. I think of the kids growing up in this culture today
Yes.
with social media and so much stuff and so
Yeah.
many people telling them who they are.
Exactly.
Even kids in churches, you know, there's so much pressure
Yeah.
when they need to almost imitate Jesus in a sense and pull aside from all of that and switch off all those devices
Yeah. Yeah.
and actually find their identity in their Father.
Yes.
Because those bright lights, to use that terminology, can just rob people's lives. They can drag them away. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it got to me where it was one thing or the other. And so the other came just listening to songs on radio, but that used to take, you know, used to be it was embedded into my spirit was He, the name of that song. And then I met a man called Peter, you see. And then much later in life, On the Wings of a Dove. You know, and I can use that. I can use that when I evangelize out there, because I know they've heard it in their days.
Yes, because that's right. So that was the
That's-
bright light sort of
Yes.
stuff as well.
It
Yes.
entailed all that.
Yes. Yeah, so it's almost like the way God's connecting to them through their speak or their
That is-
language.
That is right.
Mm,
Yes.
A little bit more on that singing front. So where were you singing besides church? When you sort of travelling around in this truck, was it always two meetings, or was there other places?
It was
that you
always
sort
two
of-
meetings
Yes.
until, you know, we got to a certain age,
Yes.
and then it never happened anymore,
Okay.
sort of thing, you
Yeah.
know. As we grew, the church grew away,
Okay.
or we grew away from the church,
Okay.
if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but I still kept singing until the Australia's Amateur Hour came out.
Okay.
And they said to me, when I say they, people around abouts,
Yes.
yeah, and said, there, why don't you and Darb get on to the Great Australian Amateur Hour?
So what year was this?
50, 51, yeah.
So you're how old now? In 51. When you went to the amateur hour. You're younger than 16 at
Very,
this stage.
very
Yeah. So
young.
you were young. So in a sense, it was like today's Australia's Got Talent or Australian Idol sort of thing.
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
sounds of things.
yeah.
So we're 10 or 11 or younger.
I'd say 10,
Yes.
but I somehow thought I was 14
Okay.
when I went, because
Yes.
my brother, Tom, the older one, brought a man home. In the middle of a sleep, we were, and he woke us up and said, here, you need to sing to this man. I don't know who that man was anyway. But got us to sing on the guitar.
Okay. So was this? Who was that man? Was he?
I don't know to
Oh, wow.
this day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I don't know what song we were supposed to sing anyway.
Yes.
And we went in to the Australia's Amateur Hour. We were tested for that through 4CA.
Okay.
Mm.
So was that a radio show?
It's a radio,
Yep.
yes,
Yes.
and Terry Deer was the one
Okay.
that managed the program.
So what was that experience like?
I was so nervous because I
Yes.
didn't know, and they could tell, and
Oh, being so young.
yeah, being so young, yeah. And then we had the Reading Sisters. They're dark, and they are of not Polynesian, maybe,
Yep.
but they sang and they got through to the
Yes.
Australia's Amateur Hour,
Okay, yes.
and they have made a name for themselves.
Okay, yes.
The Reading Sisters.
The Reading Sisters.
Yes.
There you go.
That was back in the 50s,
Yeah.
51, 52,
Yep.
and they just kept on going.
Yeah.
But of course, in those days, we never had any money
No,
to go anywhere,
that's right.
really.
Yes.
But and that was that.
Yeah.
And we just didn't I didn't answer the call to the radio. So to say.
Yep. Yep.
Mm.
So
To that radio,
yeah, wow.
Australia's Amateur Hour.
Australia's
Mm.
Amateur.
Mm.
So you went on it, but you just didn't go through.
No. Mm.
So somebody else went through, and then, like, sort of back in, you move forward a little bit more again, back into the teenage years. What was your teenage years like?
Oh, it was Buddy Holly.
Yes.
It was the Everly Brothers.
Yep.
It was those
Yep.
guys.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know.
Sure.
Yeah, and it was Roy Orbison.
Yes.
Oh, back in
Yeah, some
those days.
really good music.
They were good music.
Yeah, great.
You know,
Yes.
and I thought, because my mum would be singing out to me and said, less of those songs, you downstairs, you hear me? That's what she would say.
Yes.
She said, remember, we've got Jesus to
Yes.
sing to.
Yes.
And she would be always honest
Yes.
in that way.
Yeah.
Never forget who he is.
Yeah.
And well, actually, we never forgot,
Yes.
but we just kept going that way.
Yes.
Yeah. A little bit worldly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think we
Yeah.
can all fall into
Yeah.
distractions at times. And like we said earlier, that you knew God sort of always had His hand on you, even from the fact that bombs could be going off,
That
just
is
5
right.
to 10 meters
Yeah.
away, and you're protected. And even as you were drifting, He gives us our free will, but He's just standing there going, "I'm still here.
Yes.
I'm still
Yes.
here." So could you share a season of your life, where whatever timeline that is, whatever age, that maybe you, well, not maybe, that you definitely felt God sort of bringing you through that season, and what that would have been like for you?
I think I went quiet, really. What age I would be then? Are you talking between?
Whatever
What
age really, but just a story, if you can recall a story that you went through a challenging season in your life,
Yeah.
that you know God guided you, even if at the time you weren't sure, and you know He was
yeah.
with you, helping you through.
Right. Well, at that time, well, this is getting up into the teenage years now. All right.
Yep.
And along came my brother and his wife.
Yes.
Wasn't his wife then, but they bore 5 children. Was it 5? Yeah. And after he had children with her, he was kind of looking at me
Yes.
to help with the children,
Yes.
and that's what I used to do.
Yep.
Go to their place and help them out with the children, because he was then a gun cane cutter,
Okay. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Tom being the oldest,
Yep.
and she used to work, Days used to work as well,
Yep.
until babies came along, well then
Yes.
she never worked then. In between, yes,
Yes.
but she mainly was home just cooking,
Yep.
you know, for the family as well. I think it was just only Thomas, young Peter, young Tommy, young Peter, and Helen.
Okay.
Yes, and my responsibility was Helen.
Yep.
Mm.
So you were like a helper for her?
I looked after her.
Yes.
I looked after her because mother always would bath her,
Yes.
but you know, and after all that, mother had washing to do,
Yes.
and she had the pulling in of clothes, you know, outside on
Yeah,
the
of course.
outside,
Yeah.
lying out in the open,
Yep.
and cooking was just cooking, you know, because there were her brothers too,
Mm.
my sister-in-law's brothers. They used to come on home, and I was quite huge when she used to cook.
Yes.
So when I used to take charge of the little girl.
There was no little microwave meals getting thrown in the oven.
Nothing.
It was
Nothing. It was wood stove.
wood
and
stove,
no,
and you had to
yeah,
preheat it. And
That's right.
everything.
And my sister-in-law days, she was very good
Mm.
at it. But you know, and the two boys, and they weren't of school age because they were all under the age.
Mm.
Yes. And so with Helen, I took charge of her.
So how
But-
old was Helen?
She was a baby.
She
9
was a
months.
baby. Yes.
She was 9
Okay,
months
so she was
old.
little, Yep.
Yeah, and she was 9 months old, and when my sister-in-law would take her, how old was I? 15, 16, I'd say, 17, thereabouts.
Yes.
Yeah, and she said, "Now, give you a bath, clean you up, make your bottle, and your Aunt Lou can look after you." She addressed me as Aunt Lou.
Yep.
Yes. So it was okay. Gave her to me. I'd burp her and everything and just lie her down
Yes.
in this little crib.
Yep.
And I'd get my guitar.
Yes.
You see, Jesus was always there.
Yes. Yes.
And I'd sing all these choruses
Yes.
to her.
Wow.
And she would just lay there and look
Wow.
at me.
Wow.
And the favourite song was, "Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine. Year of salvation, perfect of God. Born of His Spirit, I'm lost in His love." Yes. And I'd sing that to her,
Mm.
and she would eye me,
Mm.
yeah, and then all of a sudden she'd drift off to sleep. And that child, when she grew up, I still had them. When their mum died, I looked after the children then. And I wasn't all that old, really. I was hitting 19, 20,
Wow. Wow.
yeah.
So then you were responsible for looking after those.
While the brother went to work.
Yes.
And still I took them to church. Their mother's brother was a pastor,
Okay.
Kenny Stewart. And we used to come down here to Riverston Road, and I'd take them to church. Helen, Carol and Milton. I had them under my wing
Yep.
and took them to church. Today, Helen and Carol got their husbands and they go to church. They have been now for many years.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
So,
Mm. Yes,
so those seeds that were planted in their hearts.
that's right.
As
Yeah.
youngins flourished.
And she sits with me in church today.
Yeah.
You know, she has, you know, but she's been in church for the best part. And she's 60,
Yes.
67,
Wow.
68.
It's beautiful.
Yes,
It's beautiful.
yes. And she loves the Lord.
Yes.
But there have been many other kids too that succumbed to coming to church
Yes.
at Sunday school.
Mm.
Yes.
Mm.
Because they used to see Helen and Carol
Mm.
at Sunday school quite a few times, and they used to come quite a few Sundays. Yes, the kids loved it. Yeah, those other kids, which would be the Olivers, the Bonds, and the Nobles.
So were those kids just in the local neighbourhood?
That's right. Far and near,
Okay.
Deerell, Ballenden Kerr. They used to all just come.
Yep.
Distance was no problem.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, they came to church.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Yes, and there was a lot of elderlies there. All my uncles and grandpa used to come to church. They were the Ambrooks. They were the Vanuatuans.
Okay.
Mm.
So through that season of the kids that you're really raising, losing their mum, obviously God was there, but that must have been a challenging time.
It sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was very challenging. Yeah. Because I'm not saying I didn't know how to look after them. It's just that it was a strain on me with 5 kids.
Oh, definitely.
You know.
Yes. Yeah.
And some of them would, the boys, their mother's uncles
Yes.
would say, okay, we're going up to Granddad's up on the table again.
Yes.
Anybody wants to come? And those 2 boys would jump up and say,
Yep.
yes, we're coming.
Yes.
You know, and so they'd hop up. I only left with 3,
Yep.
Helen, Carol and Milton.
Yes.
You know, and they were easily managed.
Yep.
And I'd go down to my mum, from Little Mulgrave down here to Gordonvale.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'd stay there for the weekend.
Yep.
And I'd take them to the movies,
Yes.
you know, whatever.
Yep.
That's matinees of an
Yeah,
afternoon.
that's right. Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah. And yes, and that's when I managed them until I got married.
Yeah, so
Mm.
so what age were you when you got married?
26.
26.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
So I was going to ask earlier, did you have children?
1.
One child?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Mm. And these are my family here.
Your family, they're beautiful. Wonderful.
That's my Alison.
Yes,
That's my mum, Alice.
yes,
That's me.
yes,
They are my 2 granddaughters.
yes,
Oh, here, Zakira.
yes,
They are the 3 granddaughters.
yes.
This one here was her.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
and that's them. Yes. So I've got 3 granddaughters. Today they're all of working age. One works over here at St. Michael's Catholic. She's a liaison officer.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So good.
And the middle one, I'll call her Middleton, Jacqueline. She's, that's Jacqueline just here.
Yep,
She, they know God
yes,
because I took them to church.
yes,
I
yes,
took them when they were of a young age.
yes.
So they know
Mm.
because their mother had to work because their dad was killed. Know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes,
And I ushered them under my wing
yes,
and took them to church.
yes.
Mother had to work almost late into the night, and that was known as the Department of Social Security.
Okay.
Came Centrelink
Yep,
today.
Yep, yep,
Mhm. And Jacqueline, the middle one, she works in Centrelink today.
Oh, wow.
She turns 30 on the 19th of August. So, yeah, and she's got 2 great grandsons. She presented.
Yeah.
Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely babies they are. Yes. So I'm concentrating on them now,
Yes,
but that will come later. It's all about those kids I was looking after.
for sure.
Helen and Carol.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep,
And Milton.
yes.
And yeah. Mm.
So how many years were you married for?
8 years because my husband had a fatal heart attack.
Wow.
And we didn't know.
Wow.
Didn't know anything about
Wow.
the fatal heart attack.
So there was no warning signs, just
Nothing.
Wow.
Because he worked on the railway.
yes.
Mm.
Mm.
And,
Hard work.
yes, yeah. And Alison and I used to see him on weekends.
Mm.
That's the only time.
Mm.
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 Because he was in the flying gang.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm. But he liked church too.
Mm.
So we all went to church together.
Yes.
Mm.
So that must have been a very, very, very challenging time for a young lady of 28
Yes.
to have lost her husband. Yeah, like, what was that like to go through?
Actually, it was a bit of a shock really because we didn't know.
Mm.
And his doctor was Dr. Fischera, Dr. Marquardt, I think, and an Indian doctor. they knew about his condition that I didn't.
Okay. So did your husband know about his condition?
No, he did not,
To the degree?
not to that degree, because I think the doctor, all they said, they wouldn't say anything to him or wouldn't say anything to me, that he, you know, if anything, if he has a heart attack, he would have a fatal one. But we did not know this. The doctors never told us all this. And Alison came up to me and she said to me, my girl, she said, Mum, she said, something wrong with Dad. And I said, meaning? She said, well, he was having a heart attack and he was holding a knife in his hand and he was peeling an orange. And when that pain hit him, he had the knife at the same time. And as he went forward, cut his jugular vein. Cut his jugular vein, though. And that's when Alison ran to me and said, Mum, something wrong with Dad. And the blood place was just covered with blood.
Wow. That's traumatic.
But he was in the hospital then.
Yes. Yes. So I don't sort of want to sit in that space of
No.
you know, the sadness and the, you know, tragedy, but we all do go through these seasons of life
That is right.
we just
We
don't
do move
understand,
on.
and they're hard at the time. We can feel so isolated. So
Well,
can you just share some things that helped you to journey through that?
Yeah, well, by then, I was cabareting then,
Okay.
a little bit after. Something to bring me out of
Yes.
so I used to go cabareting.
Yeah. So
You
what did
know.
that look like? What did cabaret
Ah.
look like?
Well, if people think that it's everything's all hunky-dory, it isn't. It really isn't. And I wanted to be up where Johnny Farnham is.
Okay.
I wanted to be up with Olivia Newton-John.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
But I could sing everywhere I went. I could
Yes.
sing.
Yes.
You know, this is the bright lights now that's bringing me into all this stuff.
Yep.
And I sang and sang and sang in cabarets wherever I went, whatever town
Wow.
I was in.
Yes.
And of course we were living in Innisfail,
Yes.
and that's where it all happened.
Yes.
And I was, well, my husband sang along too, you know, at that time,
Yep.
before he got, what's his name? And of course, a lot of people do look at me today and say, here she is, the singer. They'd call me that if I went to Innisfail, because I left Innisfail about over 20 years ago
Yes.
now. Yeah. And, but Alan, it came to a point where you just couldn't keep up with this farce. You just couldn't keep up. And I stood in my mother's shower room and I said, Lord, this is me now. This is after everything,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. So that
everything.
was almost like a distraction from what happened in a sense.
is
Like you
right.
just submerged yourself in this, and then you've had this
Mhm.
epiphany of this waking moment.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yes. And he heard my cries, and the Lord was awoken, and he heard my cries. So I went into the shower room because I heard my young sister Patricia say to me, I'm going up to the, to church tonight, and she said, why don't you come? And I said, no, I'll be right. I'll just go up to the hotel, and just sit about for a while. And I like game of pool, yeah. And she said, well, I might see you up there, like that. She was going to her niece's place, really, for a prayer meeting.
Yes.
That's what that was all about,
Yep.
up in Riverstone. And I said, well, okay, we'll see you later, like that, when you come home, like that. But I walked into the shower room and I said to the Lord, I said, Lord, I'm jealous. I did, I told him straight. I am jealous. They've got peace. They've got love, they've got joy. what have I got, Lord? This is how I was talking to
Yes,
Jesus.
yes.
Yes.
Mm.
And I said, I'm going. I want to meet you there. Did I ever? He knocked me straight to the ground.
So you went to that meeting?
I went to that little cottage meeting.
Yep.
And then from there, I just sung out to everybody, please forgive me. Please forgive me for the way I've lived my life, for the way I've spoken to you, Lord.
There's so much in that, like for me, like just hearing that the human heart sometimes clings to these things that we think are going to bring us joy or happiness, and then you get to the end of it, you think there was nothing, and then you see that they've got this joy and this happiness. And I think there's so much people that search and look for all this stuff in life and think that that's going to fill them, and the true happiness can only come from a relationship with Christ. And then like to hear you say that from someone who's singing cabarets and all this stuff, because even people who look at that can think that that's some measure of happiness.
Yes.
But if you haven't got God in the midst of that and you're doing it for Him, it sort of becomes meaningless. So
because I spoke to Him.
Yeah, and He met you. I like the fact that you were honest with Him, and I think you look at the Psalms. There's so many times where David would just cry out to God, and I know in my early journey of my walk with the Lord, I wouldn't pray because I thought that He wanted a certain kind of prayer that had to be constructed, and I'd hear people pray and I think, wow, they're really good at that, I better not say anything. But I think just that open transparency in that conversation, just like we're having, is what He wants, and when we're feeling terrible, we share that with Him. So to move forward into years, in your community, obviously, you've been instrumental just in this journey. You've raised children, your own children, you've sang and you've travelled and you've done all this stuff. So for you now in your life, like what do you do in your day-to-day life? As in I've met you at church. Obviously you're invited to Woolworths the other day to their grand opening, because obviously in this town you're very well respected. So there's something there that I feel that you've sown into so many other people's lives. Maybe some have received, maybe some haven't, but there's been a lot of lives that you've sown into. And it's more than the fact that you've just grown to be an elder in the age demographic, but in that you've gathered all this wisdom through your own life's experiences and journeys and that. So what does your
today life
look like for you?
My today life is happiness.
Yes.
Inside and out.
Hallelujah.
And that's what it's all about, because I do know something's going to happen in Gordondale.
Yes.
We've ministered for so long in Gordondale. Ever since I was a child growing up, used to have the open airs, and we used to, they used to have gospel shops. For God so loved the world. Jesus is, is the bread of life. And they were coming out from different ones, standing and doing gospel shops. Yes. And our only singing song was, as little kids, everybody ought to know who Jesus is. And I remember all that, Alan, because Gordondale was the place we ministered to many ways and for many long years. Every weekend, that's what we do. Apart from going to church, these are my before today. Yes. You see, and that's today. I get to think of that. I get to see. Until I heard about you two coming, and what's his name's wife? Shauna,
yes.
She said to me, guess what? And she told me, da 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 da. And she said to me, he said, I know this is up your alley.
Isn't it good the way God does that? That's so good.
I know this is up your alley.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I nearly turned inside out when I heard Evangelist was coming through.
So
Yes. And I I said, oh, good, you know, like that. And because I'd already done all this.
Yes.
Way up the Cape,
Yes.
right over to Arnhem Land,
Yes.
up on the very tip of
Yep.
Arnhem Land.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
I sung my way all through.
Yes.
You know, everything came out in the song. Yeah.
Yeah. Just for people who don't know, Auntie Linda and I, we went to the Rotunda here in Gordonvale yesterday. My wife and I, Alicia, played some songs, and then Auntie Linda got up and she sang, and it was just amazing. And I had this sense, and you know, if Jesus hasn't come back before next time we're here, that this was almost like a rekindling of things gone by that people had already been doing, but God's birthing again. And I really had that sense yesterday. So if God wills, I do believe there's going to be other things happen in that space for His glory, and He's calling all these people in this town to Himself. And I'm sure there's been thousands of hours that have gone up of prayer over this community from you and from so many other people, for these people that are, I love that bright lights analogy, you know, because it's those things that bright lights will distract and blind. And you think of a rabbit when it runs on the road, it stops and it sees the lights and it's just stunned. And so many times we get stunned from these things that we actually think we want, but God's come to take those scales from our eyes to show His perfect love. And like for you to just say, you know, now you've just got this peace, like you've just got this joy, and it's not dependent on a thing, it's that knowing. So like, this is a question I always ask towards the end of an interview, like, what do you see your future looking like? You know, if Jesus doesn't come back tonight or tomorrow, in the future, what do you see happening in the future? Or what do you hope for to happen in the future?
Right now,
Yes.
I can say my daughter knows about God
Yes.
because when she was a baby, my husband and I gave her to Jesus, dedicated her.
Yes.
And I'll keep saying that I want to give our baby back to Jesus.
I think there's probably a lot of people, myself included, that can relate to that.
Yeah.
When we're watching them sort of not live the fullness of life that they can.
Yes.
And we know, because we've lived in that fallen world, or we've chased those bright lights, to use that analogy.
Yes.
And we know that the Father's heart is to just call them back to us.
Yes.
And I suppose the peace too, knowing that God knows our hearts and the desires of our hearts, and He grants the desires of our hearts. So that's obviously an important one, is that reconnect her back to
That is right.
Jesus. That's a
Yes.
prayer of your heart.
That's a prayer of my heart.
Yes.
And I've always had her children with me,
Yes.
Letitia,
Yes.
Jacqueline,
Yes.
and Zakira.
Yes.
I grew them up.
Yeah.
I took them to church.
Yes.
And they know church to this day.
Yes.
They know that. And that's where my heart is, and these kids, they know it. They know where my heart is
Yes.
for them to, all the mother has to do, get into place. She's the head,
That's right.
but I'm still up the front.
Yes.
Yes, because Alison did not know that I gave her to Jesus. She didn't know that. I only told her this a couple of weeks back, and said, you know, you can talk and say what you like, love. I said, but I gave you back to Jesus. I didn't get you dedicated so that you can, you know, talk here and there and whatever. I gave you to Jesus. And so Jesus has got you in the palm of His hands.
Hallelujah. I think on that note, that analogy, I think for so many, and I know for me, with the way things are turning out with one of my children at the moment, at times I've constantly got that giving to Jesus. Even though I didn't have him dedicated as a child, I'm constantly dedicating him in my heart to Jesus, because I wasn't walking with the Lord at the time, but I do know that He's in the palm of His hand. And I also love that analogy of just giving him to Jesus daily, and
Yes,
handing him
yes,
over.
yes.
Thank you so much for your time, and I know I'll see you again if God wills. If not here,
Yeah.
we'll see you up there. So it's been an absolute blessing, Auntie Linda. Thank you for sharing today.
Since then, he's given me songs.
Okay.
Mm.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
he's and I've written those songs, and one of them was I was mostly blessed with is Jesus, you took away my loneliness.
Mm.
You know, you face lonely years.
Do you want to share a bit of that before as we wrap up?
Jesus, you took away my loneliness, Jesus, and filled me with your tenderness, Jesus. I feel the power of your presence. Oh, Jesus, in all your glory and splendor and holiness. I sing that to him when I have a quiet moment. And I'm always sitting there and watching Jimmy Swaggart, you see, and I always sing to him. Yeah.
God bless you so much. Thank you. You're an absolutely amazing lady. It's been a blessing to
Yeah.
come and have this chat. So thank you for sharing. God bless you all, and we'll see you again soon.